Hi, welcome back to Fantasy Profits. This is our Week 6 waiver wire video. Thanks for watching, subscribing, all the comments. We appreciate that. Love you guys there in the community. So it is Sunday night. Week 5 is basically finished. If you're looking at this video, you're probably looking at picking up somebody. Maybe it's on a bye week. Next week, Detroit, New Orleans are on buys. Maybe looking for injuries or just simply adding depth to your bench. Now, one of the things that we always say in the videos for some of you, we take a different approach than many sites do, is we don't give you just a couple names are 95% available. And here's why we do that. Those that are widely available are less reliable. So we'd rather give you a bunch of names that are less available, but names that we feel like you can trust. You may not have 4 or 5 guys on there, but eventually one of the guys that we mentioned is going to be out there for you to pick up. The other thing we say every time we do this, you need to contextualize this information. Every league is different, scoring is different, size or different bench. There's so many factors we can't take, so you're going to have to flex this information a little bit. We love to answer your questions on the bottom if you have specific questions. And then the final thing I want to mention before we get right into the video is we've got a partnership with Thrive Fantasy out there. It's a daily fantasy thing like you probably haven't experienced before. If you're in a daily fantasy, I would encourage you to check this out. They're running a lot of deals out there right now, so just click on the link below, and I think you'll really enjoy the product that they have. But let's get right into our video. So get the quarterbacks out there. The first quarterback I want to talk to, I want to look at me when I say this. This is a guy that you need to seriously consider, not just this week, but many weeks after. That's Jameis Winston. Tampa Bay quarterback is 82% available out there in leagues. You need to grab this guy. Another thing to consider too is maybe somebody out there think, okay, I don't need this. Maybe you got Pat Mahomes or another quality quarterback out there, but just something to consider. Maybe your team that's got a very good quarterback, but you need some help at running back, maybe some help at wide receiver. You can leverage that guy like a Pat Mahomes or others, a guy like a Drew Brees who's having a very good year, and trade him away. You can leverage the big name they're having, sell high, and then pick up a guy like Jameis Winston, because I believe from moving forward from this point, he's going to have a very good year and be a top 10 start almost weekly. This week he's playing Atlanta. Now, the Falcons defense has lost some key defenders there, and they're really struggling. In fact, the last 3 weeks after they've lost those defenders, they're allowing 40.3 points per game. That's really bad. And this is a great situation, I think, for Jameis Winston because the Tampa Bay defense is bad. I mean, he's going to have to throw the ball 40 to 50 times a game just to keep him in it. I don't think that's a stretch at all. Very much like we're seeing right now with Andrew Luck, who's actually thrown the ball about 49 times a game. It's up there. Another thing that bodes really well for Jameis Winston, he's got great weapons around him. You got Evans, Jackson, underrated Godwin. You got Brait, and then in a couple weeks, Howard will be back there. So he's got great weapons around him. Once again, this is a guy moving forward that I think is going to be a top 10 start on most weeks. You think about the numbers that Fitzpatrick put up. Now consider this. Last year and in this preseason, okay, Winston was by far the better quarterback. He's by far more talented, more gifted than Fitzpatrick. And so you put him in that system, he could have some very good numbers out there. In fact, that's exactly the approach that I took in a number of leagues. I waited to take my quarterback late. When some of the quarterbacks I had kept my eye on weren't there, I scrapped the plan that, okay, I'm going to roll weekly with quarterbacks, and I'm going to pick up Winston last week. And I did. I picked him up, and I'm going to run him this point going forward. I think it's a great play. You guys got to look at him. Another one out there is Andy Dalton. 34% available. He plays Pittsburgh. Now, this Pittsburgh defense heading into week 5 had allowed 27 points per game in the last 11 games. That is bad. Now, the last 2 weeks, they've actually shown some improvement on defense. They've shown some signs of life. They're starting to put some pressure on the quarterback, and that's good. But even with those improvements, they are far from a good defense. This is a defense that's very porous, that allows a lot of points. Therefore, I think that Dalton's going to have a good day. Now, if you look Dalton's year right now, if you take away the Carolina game where he threw 4 interceptions, he's been very solid. Now, he's not a guy that I would trust every week, but this week in the right matchup, I think he's a good play for you out there. Another thing that bodes well for Andy Dalton this week is not only is he playing a Pittsburgh defense that's not very good, but he's playing Big Ben in that offense, and they have the ability to put points on the board, which I think is going to require Andy to throw a lot. And so, once again, he's not a guy that I would trust weekly, but he's a real good stream this week. Now, a guy that you might be looking at out there, and he might be an okay play, but I think he's more risky. And I want to caution you maybe to stay away from this guy, and that's Derek Carr. He's 56% available, and he's playing Seattle. Of course, Earl Thomas is gone. They lost a slew of defenders in the offseason, so they look like a good matchup there. I think it's tempting, but if you take away the one game that Carr had versus the Browns where he threw 437 yards and 4 touchdowns, he's averaging less than a touchdown per game. His touchdown-intercept ratio has been 3 to 6. It's not good. So I think that if you're desperate, maybe you could go with him, but I think there are better options out there than trusting Derek Carr. You just don't know what you're going to get. Let's get to some of our running backs. So the first running back I want you to look at is Alfred Morris, 58% available out there. So Matt Bryant has been banged up for weeks. And then today he left the game with what looked like a pretty serious ankle injury. Now it sounds to me like it's a severe sprain. He's going to probably miss. Initially, the diagnosis is going to be maybe 2 to 3 weeks. We highlighted Matt Breida in the preseason. We said he's a smaller back and staying healthy is going to be an issue for him, and that's exactly what we're seeing. So even if he comes back early, I think staying healthy is going to be a continuing issue for this guy. He's only 190 pounds. He's very explosive, very quick, very talented, but I think that wear and tear in the NFL, getting as many carries as he's getting, is taking its toll on his body. Well, McKinnon's out for the year. Breida's beat up. So who's the next guy up? Well, that's Alfred Morris. Today he goes out. He has 18 carries for 61 yards. And he has 3 catches for 30 yards. He's another guy that I would say is not an answer every week, but he's a nice play week to week, especially while Breida is out. Now, if you look at 4 of the last 5 games, he's had double-digit carries, and this is when Breida was still in there playing. Now, with Breida out, we're going to see an increase. Don't be surprised to see 15 to 20 carries for him the next couple weeks. And he's playing a Packers defense this week, and that Packers defense is below average. Another guy you may want to take a look at, there's Ronald Jones, running back of the Buccaneers, who's 75% available. Now, he's not a guy that you can pick up and start next week. That would be a bad plan. But I would say this one, he's playing Atlanta. Atlanta is a defense, like we previously mentioned, that's lost a lot of starters there. Now, after weeks of being a healthy scratch, he was activated last week, and he carried the ball 10 times for 29 yards. Doesn't sound great, but the reason why he was activated and he got those carries is because you look at Barber, the running back there, had struggled terribly. His yards per carry 3.0, and that's the 3rd consecutive year that Peyton Barber's numbers have dropped. And so I think at this point, if you're looking at Tampa Bay, Barber doesn't have great hands in the passing game. He's not running the ball well. There's really no incentive to continue giving the ball. You might as well give the rookie 2nd round pick an opportunity to see if he can be successful. I think Jones is a guy that you're probably going to pick up, stash on your bench, and see how the next couple of weeks go. But I know a lot of you out there, because we get a lot of messages, you're desperate for running backs. The waiver wire has been picked thin. This is one guy, though, that's widely available out there, 75% available. You can grab this guy and then sit on a couple weeks, and maybe this guy will take hold of that job. Another one out there that's widely available that you need to take a serious look at, and that's Donta Foreman, the Houston running back. He's 80% available. Now, he's going to return week 7 from an Achilles injury. Now, the reason why I'm talking about him now is if you wait till next week, there's going to be a mad rush for this guy. I already picked him up in a few of my leagues. You need to pick this up. One, Lamar Miller is just continuing to look bad. This is the 4th consecutive year that his numbers continue to slide there. And so I think that this job is wide open for him to come there and take hold of it. Last year, he looked really good. He was getting comfortable in the NFL before his Achilles injury. He's a big physical back, 6 foot, 235 pounds. In his final game before the game that he got injured in, he was having a huge game. He had 10 carries, 65 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He also had 3 catches for 15 yards. Watching the game last year, if you watch any of those games, what you notice is he looked far and away the better, more explosive and effective running back between him and Miller. Miller's had a steady decline statistically. Back in 2014, that year's yards per carry is 5.1. That was really good. Dropped to 4.5, then 4.0. Last year's 3.7, and right now it's 3.9. Coach said about Foreman, he's a smart kid. He picks up things well. He's got good hands, good instincts. I see him as a 3 down back. And so a lot of people think because he's very big and physical that he's not going to be out there in passing situations, but that's just simply not true. This guy can do it all. He's a guy that could come back. I don't think he's going to take over that role week 7. I think it's going to take a week or 2, but he could become a weekly running back 2 option, and he's a great pickup if you're in a dynasty league. Another one out there you need to consider is Isaiah Crowell. Now, he's only 24% available, but for 25% of you, a quarter of the leagues out there, Isaiah Crowell is available. So he explodes today. He goes off for 15 carries, 219 yards, and a touchdown. That gives him 5 touchdowns for the year. He's on pace for 1,248 yards, and he currently has a yards per carry of 6.8. I want to read you some notes we said about this guy in early July. Here's what we said about Crowell. Mark my words. He'll be the starting back, and Powell serve as 3rd down, change of pace back. Now, some of the carries are varied there. Went on to say there in July, he had a healthy 4.2 yards per carry playing for a woeful Browns team. He has shown he is capable in the passing game. He's still young at 25. This year, he should break 1,000 rushing yards, and like I say, he's on pace to do that. Went on to say Crowell has never finished a season worse than 27th at that position, running backs. And he's been top 20 each of the past 2 seasons, averaging a healthy 4.47 yards per carry. He is slipping far and should be a huge sleeper. You need to grab this guy late in your league. I think right now we've been pointing on with this guy. He's looking really good there. Now, the one that I would say, you'll see some inconsistencies in his performance. The reason why with the rookie quarterback there, that offense will run hot and cold at times, but he's a guy you need to pick up. Another one that's still about 20% available out there is Philip Lindsay. I'm surprised he's available out there, but you should pick him up. Now, today, Rice Freeman was used a lot less, but it was because of game script. What happened there is they fell behind, and Lindsay is better in the passing game. He's used more in some of those passing packages that they have, and so for that reason, when they fell behind, Freeman didn't get as many carries. Lindsey's been very good, but I want you to caution you by saying this. Lindsey has been very good this year. He's been very effective, but this is going to still be a timeshare going forward. This is not going to all of a sudden become Lindsey's team. He's another guy that we've talked about before who's not a very big running back. He's only 190 pounds. We know that Denver's going to make sure to give even carry, especially when Freeman actually has been pretty effective. Lindsey's yards per carry in the year are 5.8. He's got good hands, and I think it actually bodes well from the case Keenum is struggling. Usually when a quarterback struggles, what coaches will do is they'll rely on the run more, or they'll check the ball down to the running backs or throw more high percentage throws, things like that. And so I think that Case Keenum struggles actually bodes well for him. Another one that's out there, 20% available, is Aaron Jones. He would have had a big day today, but they fell behind 24-0. And so he lost a lot of carries because of game script there also. He did have today 7 carries for 40 yards and 2 catches for 19 yards and yards per carry of 6.0. When he touches the ball, he looks great. There's no doubt that he's the best running back there. Once again, I think that he's going to continue getting more carries and more touches. Hopefully, Green Bay won't fall behind 24-0 like they did today. Another guy out there that got dropped last week in a lot of leagues was Chris Carson, who's 22% available. Next week he plays Lulk, and I think he got dropped because Mike Davis came out and had that huge week. Today he goes out, he runs 19 times for 116 yards, and he caught his only target for 11 yards. Now, in back-to-back games where he's played, he's had over 100 yards rushing. Now, the one concern that I have is Mike Davis last week looked really good, had 100 yards. And he actually came out today, and Mike Davis had a significant role. Also, he had 12 carries, 68 yards, and a touchdown. My fear is what we saw today, because Mike Davis did well, he's going to get carries, and so that's going to bring down Carson's value a little bit. With that said, Carson was by far the better, more effective back in this game. And so he's kind of run as what I would call a running back 3 and can be started in the right matchup as a flex. Now this week he plays the Raiders, who have been gouged on the ground quite a bit, so I think he could have a good game there. Now I want to mention a few running backs out there. Now these are backs that are, I would say, exclusively wanted to be used or played if you're in PPR leagues. If you're in a standard league, I probably won't consider these guys. But if you're in PPR leagues, here's guys that have specific PPR league value. First one is Tariq Cohen. He's 30% available out there. He's starting to get more and more touches in that offense. Now, I think what's happening is Coach Nagy is trying to jumpstart that offense, which had exploded against the Bucs, but before that, they'd struggled quite a bit. Last game, he has 13 carries, 53 yards, 7 catches, 121 yards, and a TD. Now, I think those targets are unusual. I think you'll continue to see him get about that many targets a game. 7, 8 is not going to be unusual. I do think that his carries will probably be around 8 to 10, maybe a little less than that. He's another guy that we have mentioned in the past that's a little bit smaller of a running back. Now, his body size and type and how he's made his skill set, this is not going to become a running back by committee. Jordan Howard's still going to be the go-to guy there. Jordan Howard's still going to lead that team in carries, I think, hands down. But I think he's a guy that you could use very much like an Austin Eckler, a Chris Thompson, for example, guys like that we've seen. Now, in the offseason, there was a lot of talk that Jordan Howard wasn't a good fit for Nagy's offense. Now, Jordan worked really hard in the offseason to work on his pass catching. He actually made major strides there. But I still think when it's all said and done, you look at Tariq Cohen, he's just simply a better back in open space. He's quicker, more elusive. I think he's a better option in the passing game. I think he's probably a better fit for Nagy's offense. So I think moving forward, he's going to be consistent. I think you can trust him very much, like I said, like a Chris Thompson and that. Another one out there is Austin Eckler, who's 30% available. Now, he's going to have lower volume because Melvin Gordon's having a great year, obviously. So he's not going to creep into what I would call the running back 2 conversation, unless, of course, Melvin Gordon goes down. But he's a guy that in every game this year in PPR leagues has double-digit points scored. His yards per carry are great. He's got great hands. The team has a lot of confidence in this guy. So he has a very active role in there. He's not just getting some scraps late in the game. They're mixing up quite a bit in the middle of the game. They're trying to get him out in space and use him. So I think he's another guy that has good value. Another guy out there is Javarius Allen. 36% available. A few of you asked me about him. Today he goes out, he rushes 8 times for 34 yards while catching 6 of 8 targets for 44 yards in a loss to the Browns tonight. Now, he did lose a fumble on one of his carries. He did out-touch Alec Collins 14-13, and he did enter the game for the goal line carries. Now, if you look at it, if you compare the 2 running backs, really Collins hands down is the better pure running back. His yards per carry are better. He runs more physical, tough. But the one thing that Allen does really well is he's got very good hands. He's always been used quite a bit in the passing game. So what happened with Collins, he kind of got into the doghouse with the coach. He had 2 fumbles. He actually did that last year in the season, fumbled a couple times, even though he's run the ball well. Took a while to earn the trust of the coach back. That's what's happening right now. So kind of during this window, while Collins is going to try to earn the trust of the coach back, I think you're going to see an elevated role for Allen there. Collins did go out today. He did have 12 carries, 59 yards. Another thing that is a little bit concerning for Allen is that Collins had 9 catches. So you look at Javarius Allen, he's a guy that has PPR value as maybe a flex play in deeper leagues. And then there's Nyheim Hines, 41% available. We actually previewed him last week. Said this guy's got good value in PPR leagues. His skill set is a better fit for Andrew Luck in that passing game. Another thing that bodes well for him is that Indy's defense is bad. They're constantly throwing from behind. Andrew Luck is averaging 49 passing attempts per game, and that's actually gone up. That number was lower earlier in the last couple of games. Has actually increased that. Now you add to that the ineptitude of all the other running backs on that team there. They just haven't been very effective, and so I think right now Hines is going to continue to see quite an expanded role on that offense. Against the Patriots, he had 15 carries, 45 yards. That's not great, but none of the backs have been good in that offense. One thing that was good is he had 7 catches, 45 yards. And the week before that, he had 9 catches, 63 yards, and 2 TDs. This is a guy that's going to continue to see a lot of targets in that offense. And you have Jalen Richard. Jalen Richard's 90% available out there. He's got 24 catches in 5 games. Now, once Washington comes back there, if you look at him and Washington, they have very similar skill set, very similar build. It almost cuts his production in half. But while Washington is out, Jalen Richard is a good PPR play. And then another guys you need to watch this situation throughout the week here is Smallwood or Clement, the running backs for Philadelphia. They're simply better in the passing game than Jay Ajayi. Now, Jay Ajayi hasn't been bad. He's missed some time with the back injury. Today he had a goal line fumble, and I think he kind of got in the doghouse a little bit there, and then he tweaked his knee. So we'll have to watch and see what happens. They also are playing on a short week. And so if Jay's got a tweaked knee, playing on a short week, those guys could become all of a sudden valuable. Now I'm going to quickly rattle off a few names that are probably not available in your league, but they are out there in about 10 to 15% of leagues. And if they are out there, these are guys you need to consider. One is Yeldon, 12% available. Another solid performance today. It sounds like Leonard Fournette's going to miss next week. You got Chris Thompson. Chris Thompson currently is 11th in PPR scoring for running backs, and he's 12% available. You got Kerryon Johnson, 16% available. He actually ran really, really well today. And then the last 2 goal line carries to LeGarrette Blount, who actually didn't run very well, but ended up getting the touchdown there. Got James White, 16% available. If you're in a PPR league, this guy should not be out there anymore. He needs to get picked up in PPR leagues and started every week. He's actually the one guy that I would say is not a flex start. He is a RB2 in PPR leagues. And then Kenyon Drake today went out there, and he's 12% available. He actually ran hard. He looked good. He looked better than Gore this week. Got a touchdown. So he's going to, I think, maybe begin to earn back some of those touches, but it's good to have him. Let's get to our wide receivers. First wide receiver out there, I know that a lot of people are going to run after this guy, is Robbie Anderson. 66% available. There's somebody that we love this guy in the preseason. We talked about how he had a good year last year. We touted him as a guy that's got wide receiver 1 potential. Now, he's been struggling the first 4 games. Now, he did have 1 target for 1 catch in week 1 and a touchdown. After that, he's been very quiet. Today he goes out, he has 3 catches, 123 yards and a touchdown. Now, he's a guy that I think you need to have on your bench, but he's also a guy that I wouldn't trust to start at this point. I think part of his inconsistencies is because Sam Darnold at quarterback. Well, like we previously mentioned in other videos, this guy's got a lot of talent. As that offense gets better, as Sam Darnold gets better, this guy's going to have an increased target, increased role, and I think that he's a guy that could be a nice sleeper play down the stretch for you. Then there's Christian Kirk out there. Christian Kirk, the wide receiver for the Cardinals, 92% available. He went out today, had 3 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown. He's another one that's going to be hindered a little bit by the fact that he's a rookie, and the quarterback Josh Rosen is a rookie. So you put 2 rookies together, there'll be some inconsistency. But he's been compared to Odell Beckham. They say he's got similar quickness and hands just like him. If you're in a dynasty league in particular, he's a guy that you definitely need to have on your bench. I'm not sure from week to week if you can start him playing him. I actually had to start him in the league today because of some injuries and buys, and it worked out really well for me. This guy has a lower floor, like I mentioned, because of some of the considerations, but he actually has a high ceiling. So if he's out there, you should pick him up. Then you have Sammy Watkins, 17% available out there. Now, he missed some time due to injuries. Returned today, had 6 catches, 78 yards. Now he faces New England this week. That should be a fun game to watch. I'm going to tune into that. And I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. And because it's a high-scoring game, I think that some of that production will go to Watson. Then Kenny Galladay, another one that's not widely available out there. He's only 15% available. He had another good game today. This guy's got wide receiver 1 talent. He should be owned in all leagues and should be started almost weekly in all leagues. A few exceptions out there, of course. And then there's Tyler Boyd, who's 17% available. Boyd plays the Steelers this week. As we mentioned before, the Steelers defense is bad. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. And there's going to be a lot of points put on the board by Ben Roethlisberger, and that's going to force Andy Dalton to throw the ball. I think a lot of targets are going to come his way. He's a guy that's developed into a solid wide receiver 3 the last few weeks, and I think you can start him as a wide receiver 3 in most leagues if they're 12 teams or larger. If it's a little bit smaller, maybe not. Or if you only start 2 wide receivers. I'm in many leagues. Most of my leagues we start 3 wideouts. Some you only start 2. Deshaun Jackson's 21% available out there. In 3 of 4 weeks, he's broke over 100 yards receiving. That's excellent. Now, the one concern I have with this guy and why I'm cautious with him is his targets are low there. And the reason why his targets are low, like we had mentioned, there's a lot of weapons there. There's a lot of mouths to feed. You have Evans, Jackson, Godwin, Braid, Howard. And so his production has been excellent. But right now, I think his yards per catch, somewhere like 25 to 30 yards per catch, that's not sustainable. That's going to go down. Yet he's been too productive to ignore, so I think you need to pick him up. There's Michael Crabtree out there. I want to talk about him briefly. Is he a guy that you should pick up? He faces Tennessee this week. That defense is underrated. They're actually a very good defense. Now, in 3 of 5 games, Michael Crabtree's actually had double-digit targets, but the production is just not there. He's not getting the yards. He's not getting the touchdowns. Now, he's going to find pay dirt again. That's going to happen. He's going to occasionally have a good game. I think he can be owned. He's not a weekly start. He's a low-end matchup play if you're in a larger league. So I think it's okay to own this guy. I wouldn't start him just yet. Jordy Nelson's out there, and he's 25% available. He's had a touchdown 3 weeks in a row. That defense is bad. They play from behind a lot, so I think you're going to see a lot of garbage time stats for Jordy Nelson in that offense. He's another one you can pick up. And then there's Kiki Coutee, the wide receiver for the Titans, 67% available out there. Last week he goes out, has 11 catches, 109 yards. Tonight he goes out and he has a touchdown. He actually looked more effective. He was used more widely in that offense tonight than Will Fuller. But I think the reason why that happened, my take on it is that I think Will Fuller is still banged up. He went into the game questionable with a hamstring injury. And so he was in the game, but I think they reduced his role. I think when Will Fuller is healthy, I think that he's a better wide receiver start in that offense. But with Will Fuller's history of injuries, I think you got to have this guy on your bench because he's one injury away from being a really good wide receiver 3 start for you. Then there's Tyler Lockett out there. Tyler Lockett's 30% available. His targets aren't very high. His yards are fine, but he's had touchdowns in 4 or 5 weeks. You can pick him up. There's Randall Cobb. Randall Cobb is 42% available. This guy goes out week 1, explodes, has a huge game. Ever since then, he had some problems. He had some drops, missed assignments, injuries, fumble. You could maybe stash him in if you're a really deep league. We have a deep bench, but I think we've seen a constant dropping production. Another thing doesn't help. Now, Allison missed this week's game. He never got cleared from concussion protocol. We assume he'll be cleared for next week. So I think Randall Cobb is widely available. I think he's a guy they need to watch. I'm not sure that I would put him on my bench yet. I actually own him in a couple leagues and I dropped him. Guy that you need to pick up out there is Chris Godwin, who's 62% available out there. He's a very talented second-year wide receiver. He's had a touchdown in 3 or 4 games. The coaching staff loved him. Going into this year, everybody felt like he was going to leapfrog Jackson in terms of being the number 2 guy there. Hasn't had the yardage, but has had more touchdowns and actually had more targets than Jackson. Plays an offense, once again, that has to throw the ball a lot. Then you have Mohamed Sanu, 68% available out there still. Versus Tampa Bay. 3 weeks in a row, he's been good. He's been very quality out there. Now, you do have Calvin out there. You've got Jones out there. I think a lot of guys there that get targets, that keeps the ceiling lower. But we have seen an increase in his targets. And with that defense for Atlanta being so porous, I think those increasing targets are coinciding with that defensive struggle. So I think that you can probably see that those targets will stay right about where they have been the last couple of weeks, therefore making him a decent play from week to week. Another guy out there I think you need to keep your eye on. I want to see what he does tomorrow night. We haven't had the Monday night game, but Cameron Merida came over from Chicago. They paid him about $5 million a year. 1 year Chicago there, he goes out. That offense was kind of messed. Jay Cutler's the quarterback. He has 888 yards receiving in only 14 games. He had 3 games over 100 yards. Looked really good. New Orleans brought him in, but he was slowly recovering from an ACL injury, so it took a while. Missed a lot of camp. Missed first couple games. Then he got started first game. He had a touchdown. Last week, I think he had 3 catches. So I think you need to watch how he does tomorrow night. This is a guy that in that offense could become a very good number 2 wide receiver for them. So keep an eye on him. Then there's tonight Valdez Scantling, the wide receiver for the Packers. 91% available out there today. He goes out 7 catches, 68 yards. This is with Allison and Cobb out. And so that production can be a little deceiving. I don't think he's going to have a huge role. If obviously Allison misses more time, if Cobb misses more time, then he might get some targets or he might get some looks. I think his production is solely based on those injuries. So if those guys come back, suddenly his value drops. Now I want to take a look at the wide receiver situation for the Colts out there. Now, we talked about how much Andrew Luck has been throwing the ball there. He's thrown about 49 times per game. Of course, T.Y. Hilton is a very good wide receiver. He missed last game because of an injury. He's the #1 guy there. But after that, who's the #2 guy for an offense that needs to throw the ball out? There's two guys that really come to mind. One is Ryan Grant, 92% available, and then there's Chester Rogers, 95% available. So when I look at Ryan Grant, I think he's a more solid, proven guy, but he has a limited ceiling. And I look at Chester Rogers, he's had 22 targets in 2 games. One game he goes out, 8 catches, 85 yards. He follows that up with 8 catches, 66 yards. I think of the two guys, the guy that I would probably roll with is Chester Rogers, simply because I think he's got a higher ceiling and more potential. But you also have to remember that those numbers were elevated because Hilton was gone for a good portion of that one game and also for this last one. Two last guys I want to mention out there that you should maybe consider, and that is Martavis Bryant, wide receiver for the Oakland Raiders. He's a guy that we've known for many years is very talented. Sometimes the coaches get frustrated. He struggles to understand the playbook. He'll make some mistakes, but physically very gifted guy. He's 96% available. Today he goes out 3 catches, 91 yards. We're seeing now he's had 3 catches, I think, in 3 consecutive games, so he's not having a ton of play there. But if that team loses a few more games, and if Oakland begins to look to next season and developing some of those young players, I think his role might be expanded because he's still relatively young. And then there's Rashid Higgins, wide receiver for the Browns. Callaway had his role reduced because of some mistakes that he had missed, and he's the guy that's Higgins has been the guy that's been getting those targets in production, so keep an eye on him. As far as tight ends out there, Evan Ingram is 29% available. He's getting closer and closer to coming back. Now, before getting injured, he came off a very nice game. This is a guy that really impressed as a rookie, and I know that Eli Manning loves to look his way. He's a nice, safe option in that offense. So if he's available in 30% of your leagues out there, that's great. Another one that's only 11% available is Eric Ebron. Now, I think when Doyle's out, he's a top 10 play. He's been getting better and better. People forget that Eric Ebron was a first-round pick back in the day, kind of fizzled out with Detroit. I don't know if that was him. I don't know if it was that offense, because none of those Detroit tight ends now are doing it particularly well. But he's been doing really well for the Colts. And so keep your eye on him. Another one that I really like, this guy, David Njoku, is 27% available out there. He's a guy that was very talented. In fact, a lot of scouts said that he was most skilled tight end coming out of last year's draft, although he was a little raw, needs some time to develop. But I think he's had a year to develop. I think he's getting better. First couple games he struggled. I think it was because of Tyrod Taylor. Now that you got Baker Mayfield in there, Baker Mayfield goes in there. The first game that he took him, he came back and drove down. They got their first win. First couple drives, he had 2 catches immediately. Goes in the game right after, has 5 catches, 52 yards, and today goes out, has 6 catches for 69 yards. This is a guy I think you need to grab out there. I think he's going to be very solid. Then there's O.J. Howard. O.J. Howard is 50% available in leagues out there. Now, he might miss another week, 2 or 3, depending out there. But he was playing great. I think he's a nice stash. If you want to be patient, he's a guy that you could stash. And when he does come back, you're going to get yourself a very quality tight end. In the meantime, while he's injured, Cameron Brate is 71% available out there. Like I said, Howard's off to a great start. He's going to miss some time, so hopefully Brate will get a lot of those targets. Brate is a guy that's been in the NFL and shown he can be very effective. He had 14 touchdowns the 2 previous seasons, and he's had touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. And then right now for Dallas, there's a Jeff Swaim, I think you say his name, out there, 92% available. Last three weeks, we're seeing him get more and more involved in that offense. He's being targeted more. That Dallas team desperately needs receivers out there. They need guys to throw the ball to, and right now he seems to be developing. We think about for so many years, Witten had a huge role in that offense and how effective it was, and I think that he's a guy that you need to keep an eye on there. And you have Greg Olsen. He's about 32% available in leagues out there. He's had a foot issue. He had a foot surgery last year, comes back, re-injures that foot. So here's what you need to do with the guy. Obviously, you can't ignore how talented he is, but he needs to have a prove-it game. Don't get excited when he comes back and start him right away. People did that last year and they were burned for 2 to 3 weeks. So pick him up if you need to, but stash him. Don't depend on him for a couple weeks. Austin Hooper, 43% available out there. We pushed hard last week, so he's got a great matchup. He's got another solid matchup this week. He goes out this week in a good matchup and has 9 catches for 77 yards. And there's Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki was highly touted. The guy was a combine beast. Talked about how talented, how skilled he was. 90% available out there. Now, I'm not saying you need to pick him up and start this guy. I think it's probably better just to monitor his progress. But he's starting to get more involved. I think he's starting to figure it out a little bit, and so I think his role is going to expand. And maybe in a few weeks, he's a guy that you could start in the right matchup. And then another one out there is Ryan Griffin, the Houston Texans tight end. went out tonight and had a very good night. So those are some guys you should consider for next week. Hope your season's going well. I had a good week myself in fantasy, but really enjoyed my Vikings. Got back on the winning track, playing in Philadelphia on the road. I wasn't feeling very good about it, but now we got back to 2-2-1, and we got a few games come up that are winnable, so I think that we can turn our season around. Hope your season's going well. God bless. Thanks for joining us.